Our next speaker is an old friend. He's founder and executive director of the Investigative Project on Terrorism, which has been recognized as the world's most comprehensive data center on radical Islamist terrorist groups. The New York Post calls him the nation's foremost journalistic expert on terrorism. He appears frequently on numerous media outlets and has been quoted in over 500 articles about terrorism. He's recently released his latest film on terrorism entitled Jihad in America, The Grand Deception, which he's graciously going to be giving you tonight. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce an old friend, Steve Emerson. Back.
I'm glad Mallory invited only people with optimistic messages tonight. So he'll be giving out free razor blades at the end. I was a journalist, I should say. I'm a recovering journalist now. I operate at Counterterrorist Institute. And the only thing I really believe in the media today are the sports scores. And I'm reminded of how information in the intel community as well as in the media gets changed from one person to the other person, as in the game of telephone the kids play. When one kid says something to another kid, and by the 10th kid, the message changes. And it concerns an apocryphal story about a young monk who joins an order, and his first assignment is to copy the copies of the scriptures, as has been done for hundreds of years. And the young monk goes to the senior monk and says, you know, if I copy the copies and there's a mistake, I'm only going to be replicating the mistake. Why don't I copy the original scriptures? And the senior monk says, that's a wonderful idea, son. Let me go down to the vault and check the original scriptures against the copies. So the senior monk goes down to the vault. An hour, 2, 3, 4 elapse, and nobody hears from him. So the junior monk goes down to look for him. As he gets close to the vault, he hears this sobbing, this wailing, this crying. And then he sees the senior monk just pouring his eyes out over the scriptures. And he asks the senior monk, what's the problem? And the senior monk responds, the word was celebrate. I work in the area of counterterrorism, have done for about 20 years, and I'm proud to say my friend Tawfiq Hamid, who I first saw in New Zealand, right? I remember his name was Irving Rabinowitz at that point, undercover. We work. The organization is an organization that's pretty unique because we do our own primary investigations. We recruit our own informants inside jihadi groups, sometimes even more successfully than the FBI, because we don't require them to testify before grand juries or in trials where their life expectancy can be shortened after that. We do our own investigations working with the FBI, other three-letter agencies. We also tangle with those agencies, especially with agencies that the higher up you get in the food chain in Washington, the more politicized they are, as evident by the fact that in the last year or so, the FBI has engaged in a wholesale purging of any material that has been deemed offensive to Islam, in which case they have literally destroyed and removed from Quantico, from FBI libraries, from websites, from reading materials, from course materials, PowerPoints, books, articles, anything that was deemed to be offensive to Islam. And the people who made that decision were members of the Muslim Brotherhood. The film that I've just come out with, which, by the way, there's a local connection because it won the best film in the Myrtle Beach Film Festival. It's called The Grand Deception. Why did I call it The Grand Deception? I mean, I deal with terrorism, pre-9/11, post-9/11. But the issue goes beyond just terrorism. It goes into the whole issue of political machinations and the growth of our policy, the growth of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the father of all militant Islamic groups in the world. Started 100 years ago, and when they were under pressure in the 1950s, they came to the United States. They formed a whole network in the United States starting in 1963 at the University of Illinois at Urbana under the Muslim Student Association, MSAs, which were all chapters of the Muslim Brotherhood. What is the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood? Well, you saw part of it when Morsi got elected in Egypt. That's the same ideology that holds true in the United States, except these groups engage in deception. Under false moniker, they define themselves as civil rights groups or as innocent religious groups, and they immunize themselves from any type of criticism or expose by claiming that any criticism of their organizations, because they are front groups for Hamas, for Hezbollah, for the Muslim Brotherhood, or for any Jamaat groups, is considered to be a hate crime or a racist comment against Islam. That would be no more valid than saying that a criticism of David Duke was somehow an attack on white civilization. The reality is that Islamic political groups, Islamist political groups, have decided that the best way to acquire political power is not necessarily through the barrel of a gun, but it's through the ballot box, through political insinuation, through manipulation of the media, through infiltration of the Democratic Party, and they have acquired an immense influence within the Democratic Party, within Hollywood, within the White House, so much so that when the White House, when Obama got elected in 2008, he announced immediately that the White House was transparent and that anybody who wanted to see any visitor to the White House could go to the White House visitor portal and see and look up the name of any visitor. Well, if you went to the portal, you couldn't navigate. It was deliberately done just like the healthcare website. It was impossible to navigate. So we decided to download all 4 million records from the website, created our own database, and then we popped in the names of 5,000 militant Muslim clerics, leaders in the United States that at some point or another were tethered to, indicted, or unindicted co-conspirators, or involved in a radical group that the FBI or some other agency had designated as a front organization for radical Islam. And guess what? 5,000 names came spitting out. All of them had meetings in the White House, including front groups for Hamas, front groups for the Muslim Brotherhood, front groups for Hezbollah. And remember, these groups don't call themselves Hamas or Hezbollah or the Muslim Brotherhood. They have much more innocent-sounding names. The Council on American Islamic Relations, the Islamic Circle of North America, which has a clinic down here in Mount Pleasant, which is a medical clinic. And if you look on their website, as Stuart made me do last night for 2.5 hours, which I'll get back at you for that. You would think that they were just the Islamic Circle of North America was just a do-gooder organization like the Rotary Club that just wants to help people with medical problems or if they're poverty or whatever. Well, if you look actually what they do, and the reason we know what they do is that we infiltrate these groups through Muslim informants, through recording video and audio behind closed doors what these groups say. And we've done that since 1992, and I can tell you since 92 up until this present day, we've acquired, either that's a bomb or I have to stop talking. We've acquired more than 40,000 hours of undercover video and audio of what these groups say. So nobody can accuse us of fabricating what these groups say behind closed doors in contrast to what they say publicly in concert with Hollywood, with ABC News, with CNN, which I think is even worse than Al Jazeera, and with academia. And I think that when you look at the totality of things, it's not just the threat of terrorism that is occurring, that is threatening us, and that is threatening us, but it's the whole growth of the political Islamist movement in the West and our refusal to confront it, but rather appease it. The way we appeased Iran in allowing them enrichment, we're appeasing these very same groups, allowing them access to military bases, giving them access to law enforcement, quashing investigations, and it's news now that you'll learn that the current Attorney General, among his many sins, literally quashed half a dozen major indictments of terrorist supporting charities because he deemed it to be, quote, offensive to Islam. And there were indictments prepared by prosecutors. This has not come out, but an IG is investigating. So, in short, if you think my 8-minute presentation here was depressing, watch the 70-minute version, and you're all entitled to a free copy. Website, I can tell you what it is. It's www.investigativeproject.org, and you can sign up for our daily emails, as well as make any contributions you like by the end of the year. Thank you very much.
By the way, you'll be around here to talk with people. I know there's a lot of